During a recent interview, the Democratic governor of California, Gavin Newsom, had some pretty strong words, not just for Republicans, but also for Democrats. And a recent terrifying NBC poll suggests that we Democrats desperately need to heed his words. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video and a terrifying recent NBC poll. Full disclosure, this video should hype you up. It should invigorate you when you hear the governor's words. And when you see this poll, it should also terrify you, and it should motivate you and I and everyone in between, those of us who oppose the Republican Party, especially in its current form, to get out and start in every possible way making a difference. Let's start with the good news first. This is a 2-minute clip from a recent MSNBC interview with Governor Gavin Newsom. Pay attention to his words because he is speaking the truth and spitting facts.
Policies are great, but as you well know, as someone who's run for office multiple times, including in this one term as governor.
I've had 3 elections in 4 years.
But
Thank you to the recall.
Right, but as you know, elections are sometimes decided on emotion rather than concrete policies. And right now, it seems like culture war stuff, so-called culture wars, are driving people to extremes. So you mentioned it earlier, rolling back the teaching of history, putting targets on the backs of LGBTQ kids with "Don't Say Gay" bills. What is the effective message to push back against?
How about have a message that's offensive, not just defensive? We've been on the defense too long. CRT, ESG, DEI. I joke, it's everything with 3 letters. DOJ, FBI, IRS. And we're constantly on the receiving end of that. Look, one thing I've learned from the propaganda networks out there, facts don't matter. Illusion rules. It's who dominates the narrative. What's Trump's success in this primary? It's about dominating the narrative. Flood the zone. When the courtroom is a campaign stop, you're flooding the zone. DeSantis said it himself. Says, it's hard to get any attention out here. So what Democrats need to do is we need to flood the zone. See, the benefit we have the facts. They don't. We have the policies. They don't. We have the record. They don't. They have rhetoric. They're obstructionists. The reason you're on a cultural purge, Republican Party, is you don't have an agenda for unifying this nation. The Democratic Party should be dominating right now. It's time to get back on the offensive and start to feel good again. How about a little joy? And I just think more of us should get out and feel proud to make the case and not feel defensive and timid.
Yes, preach, Governor Newsom, 100%. It's almost like Governor Newsom is a follower of Pondering Politics, that he's liked and subscribed, right? Because especially some of these things are practically verbatim, right? It's great to have the facts. The facts are important. But when it comes to winning elections and persuasion, facts are only useful if you're able to parlay those facts into persuasive rhetoric and you're able to persuasively make a case. Okay? Republicans and the Fox Propaganda Network and OAN and Newsmax, as well as Ben Shapiro, The Daily Wire, Charlie Kirk, Steven Crowder, et cetera, and so forth, that entire mainstream and alternate media ecosystem has done pretty damn well, disproportionately well, despite the fact that they have relatively few facts on their side and certainly terrible policies and a terrible record, as this NBC poll will demonstrate. We have got to get to a place where we viciously reclaim the narrative, where we reject the false premise, and we put Republicans on the defensive. And it's also requires reshaping the mainstream media ecosystem as well, because people can say what they want, but as you know, because we've talked about it in previous videos, and I've given you a litany of examples, CNN, the New York Times, the Associated Press, Reuters, all of these mainstream outlets, CBS, ABC, they grade Republicans on a curve. They just simply do. Even if the writers and journalists themselves are probably much more inclined to vote Democrat than Republican, for various reasons, for sensationalism or for clicks, or because they don't want to be accused of being in the pocket for Democrats, they grade Republicans on a curve. They normalize Donald Trump's lunacy and his fascism. How many times have we seen when President Biden gives a speech where he calls out MAGA Republicans, but he gives a gazillion caveats about how it doesn't refer to all Republicans. And then on the other hand, Donald Trump refers to immigrants as poisoning the blood of our enemies or the blood of our country, and then refers to his political opponents as vermin, which need to be rooted out. How many times have you seen a headline that says Biden and Trump give divisive speeches over the weekend, suggesting a false equivalence? It happens all the time. Even the mainstream media, it's a tough ecosystem. It's a disfavorable ecosystem for Democrats. It's not just the right. It's so frustrating. And we're seeing these things manifest based on a recent NBC poll, which again, it's just so gross. So this is the topic. The question is on a few issues and personal characteristics. Do you think that Donald Trump or Joe Biden would be better? These are how the respondents answered. Securing the border and controlling immigration. Of course, Joe Biden is at a deficit here because Republicans work overtime. They do tend to perform better in terms of polling on immigration. Now, as I've discussed in previous videos, the manpower, the funding, the policies are virtually identical from Biden to Trump. Biden's a bit more humane, and Biden has requested additional funds, manpower, and resources. He put forth comprehensive immigration reform on his first or second day of his presidency. But even this, I can at least understand why there's such a disproportionate effect here. But then, look at this. Being competent and effective. Donald Trump, a malignant narcissist who accomplished nothing in his first term except a $2 trillion tax cut for the rich. He presided over a terrible management of the pandemic, which killed 500,000 Americans and tanked the economy, the great economy that he inherited from President Obama. President Biden trails him by about 16 points. Folks, there's no way to justify that. It's completely irrational given the colossal disparity between these two men. I mean, think about it. President Biden, look at all the decisive executive and legislative achievements of his presidency, despite razor-thin majorities in Congress. And then since the beginning of 2023, he lost the House and he's up against a hostile Supreme Court. The CHIPS Act, 800,000 manufacturing jobs brought back to the United States. The American Rescue Plan, which avoided a double-digit recession and brought 4 million jobs back ahead of schedule. Nearly 15 million jobs created on President Biden's watch. The stock market is breaking record after record after record. An infrastructure bill. Donald Trump promised for 4 years to give us an infrastructure bill. Biden got it done in one with razor-thin majorities. He cut child poverty in half with the enhanced child tax credit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet the perception is that Donald Trump is more competent and effective. And then even this one, folks, protecting democracy. Donald Trump tried to steal a free and fair election from Joe Biden. He tried to stage a coup to stay in office extra legally. He's talked about being a dictator. He wants to suppress voter turnout. And President Biden is only ahead of Donald Trump by 2 percentage points. There's relative parity between these two men. Absolutely insane. The only 3 matters on which President Biden enjoys a relatively healthy lead is on matters of abortion and treating immigrants humanely. In every other major policy area, at least according to this poll, Donald Trump is in the lead. Folks, this is madness. Now, the upshot is, as the pollsters point out, listen, this is February. There is time. If Biden, if Democrats, and if the media cooperates, if the media just reports the facts, you don't even have to be in the bag for Democrats. Just report the facts. And because the facts favor Democrats, just be prepared to be accused of being a Democratic shill. They do that already. The right-wing media already does that to the rest of the mainstream media when they report something positive for Democrats, right? Because to them, objective media is when you create a false balance where none exists. The other thing I'll point out, according to this poll, Donald Trump's polling has remained steady. President Biden has dipped, right? You look at July 2023, he enjoyed a 49-45 advantage over Donald Trump. And now we're in January 2024, it's 42-47. But notice this, it's the unsure. It's the don't want to vote for either, other, not sure. That's the thing that's increased. If President Biden can get these people back, then it would be 53-47. So there's still time. There are people to be gotten. I do want to play a clip here from Eric Swalwell as well, just a short clip, because I just want you to show it's not just Gavin Newsom and it's not just me. There are elected Democratic legislators who are saying the same thing. Let's throw some elbows, metaphorically speaking. Let's play ruthless with respect to rhetoric. Let's reclaim the narrative because the facts are on our side and we're up against an enemy with no limiting principle.
You know, frankly, we shouldn't be so nice and we shouldn't be so virtuous. Too much is at stake right now. And if we're going to be the ones offering solutions, as we did on infrastructure and jobs and on the CHIPS Act and on the gun safety legislation, and we're doing that now on the border, the American people should know it, because in 9 months, they're going to have to make a decision, you know, as to whether they want a party of followers of Donald Trump or a party of leaders.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I mean, obviously, they're very intelligent, very seasoned, very experienced Democratic operatives. So I'm sure they have some sort of rational basis for why they're handling it this way, for why they have allowed themselves to be a reactionary agency, to be a reactionary organization, a reactionary movement. And we have seen, as we've discussed in previous videos, President Biden's reelection campaign, at least on social media, start to take a more aggressive posture with respect to calling out Republicans and Donald Trump, trolling Trump, insulting Trump, describing Trump accurately, taking the gloves off, metaphorically speaking. And it seems to be improving some things. We started to see an actual reduction in the number of people who think that Trump is mentally fit for office. It dipped below 50%, corresponding to the increased attention and attacks on Donald Trump's cognitive deficits that it took the Biden administration forever, the Biden campaign, to start doing in the first place. But we're starting to see some manifestly positive results. So maybe we should all do it in one voice. And maybe it won't work, right? It's possible that, listen, being aggressive works for Republicans and it just doesn't work for Democrats. That's possible. But I need, and you need, we need to see that attempted. We need to see the Michelle Obama ethic of when they go low, we go high. We need to set that aside. We need to see what happens when we start playing politics just a bit like Republicans. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but we should at least try, because doing it the way we have done it seems to be risking quite a bit, right? Unnecessarily. But that's my opinion. I think we should heed Governor Newsom's words. I think President Biden should heed Governor Newsom's words. I think Democrats, elected officials, those of us who are just Democratic voters or more Democratic aligned than Republican, I think all of us should heed his words and start adopting that strategy for a while, and let's see what happens. You let me know what you think in the comments.